State of Pennsylvania. Heard on WHP 580 Harrisburg and 1210 WPHT Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Matthews.
Well, it is great to see you on a Labor Day weekend. I see what you're doing. We can see you leaving work early. You do it during the lunch hour. You say, look, I got a meeting, and then you come back Tuesday or Wednesday. Hope you're enjoying the beginning of your Labor Day weekend. Always a pleasure to be here on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name is Ken Matthews. What a crazy week it's been. Right now, we have the McCain mega coverage of the late Senator John McCain taking place, and we have the star-studded spectacular of Aretha Franklin's funeral, where Faith Hill just got done performing. And can you even imagine the talent there? The list is endless. One of the best, and I was just telling Snerdley this, one of the best tributes I heard was Ariana Grande, who has one of the best voices of her generation, I think. And she sang on Kimmel last week, Aretha Franklin, and it would bring you to tears. You Google it, look it up. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And that's the thing about some of the younger performers, some of these progressive or liberal performers, when they're actually doing their job, it's almost like athletes. When they're actually doing their thing, they're so impressive. It's just, it gives you goosebumps. And then they start talking politics, and you go, "Oh my God, what happened? What happened to your brain?" But anyway, getting back to the people that are milking the McCain mega coverage, have you ever seen so many people from the news media, from politics, from sports, from academia, from Hollywood, rally around a Republican in your life? Now, It was a very somber event. And did you see Grant Woods? He was my favorite of the eulogies. Grant Woods, I believe, was the former or one of the former chiefs of staff. And his eulogy was pitch perfect. It was beautiful. It was gracious. It was funny. And wow, that was good. It just was. You realized that John McCain, as a senator, as a man, has probably accomplished more than most human beings on the planet. And that was evident in this eulogy. And then when you got deeper into the eulogies and you started, when Chuck Schumer got up there, oh, God. And then Joe Biden. Hey, do you think it's over-covered? Do you think it's too much coverage? Do you think it's over the top? I was discussing this earlier this week with folks, and I do believe it's over the top. There are moments in the news media where there's a panel, and it almost looks like they're trying to exploit the spotlight of the death of this man, regardless of how you feel about him. He did serve his country. And one of the things that is most impressive about John McCain, and I couldn't help but notice this at the memorial, was he has a beautiful, impressive family. And to me, that's one of the biggest success stories of a man that was in Senator John McCain's position. And you may have also heard me say this about President Trump, that to be in a position of power and influence and wealth and success, and to manage to keep your family together for the most part, I just think that's very impressive. And I think other dads, moms, of course, but I think other dads would agree with me that, wow, how do you end up that far along and accomplish and achieve that much, and your kids and your family, everybody's still in your orbit? That was very impressive. And that, to me, was also one of the more moving things. I did watch a lot of the memorial, but I think where it went off the rails for me personally is even like today. I'm listening to people on CNN lecture me on John McCain's achievements, and you know how it works. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. You take someone like Cher, or somebody that was calling John McCain a racist a decade ago. She's all on the McCain team now. And you know, all you have to do as a Republican is just to say how much you dislike Trump and Sarah Palin. And you're getting invited to liberal parties. You're being called. In fact, that's the new definition of bipartisan. You want to know what the new definition of bipartisan is? That's what it is. All you have to do is show up to any meeting, any debate, and say, man, I can't stand Donald Trump. Oh, me neither. High five. Let me buy you a slushie. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews, and the number's 800-282-2882. I just got clearance in my earpiece from the tower that we will be commencing Open Line Friday this hour. I'm very excited about it. You got to get clearance from the tower to do Open Line Friday. Everybody knows this. Stein, everyone. Everybody that has the honor of guest hosting for El Rushbo knows that if you're not cleared by the tower, then you can't do it. It would be like flying in fog. So we're going to have Open Line Friday today, too. And I don't know if you heard this, but there's something going on, and I saw the preview last week. I saw the movie, The Black Klansman, the new Spike Lee movie, which I enjoyed. I thought it was one of Spike Lee's better movies. It gets a little propaganda at the end, which all his movies tend to do. And he tried to juxtaposition the era of 1968 and the true story based on the book of the first black police detective in the Colorado Springs Police Department, which is very entertaining. It's a poignant story, but it's very funny. It appears very factual as well. And then at the end, he tries to, I'm not going to tell you it, I don't want to give it away, but he takes a modern day situation and tries to marry the two. I always get the impression when I see a Spike Lee movie that he wants you to leave the theater so ticked off that you throw a brick through someone's window. And that it didn't have that feel until the very end of the movie. Then the very end of the movie, it was like, and by the way, you better hurt somebody when you leave here. I just got that vibe from it. But while I was there, I saw the preview for a movie called The First Man, which is getting rave reviews at the Venice Film Festival. This is about Neil Armstrong, 1969, first man on the moon. We all remember where we were or whatever. Some people were blacked out at the time. I think Ted Kennedy was passed out. But Neil Armstrong's first step on the moon. And it's being portrayed, Neil Armstrong is being portrayed by Canadian actor Ryan Gosling. Now, this is going to, it's starting to get some froth on it now, but this is a big deal. And this is one of those things, most things don't really get under my skin because, let's face it, if we let all this stuff get under our skin, it would be very uncomfortable. We'd have no skin. But this thing really rubs me the wrong way because of the reason they did it. They left out the scene. They cut it out completely where Neil Armstrong, and I believe it was Buzz Aldrin that unfurled the flag, and then they planted the United States flag on the surface of the moon in 1969. July. I was at summer camp in Fort Lauderdale at the time. This is a massive achievement for the United States. And it was Neil Armstrong's first order. That was his first order after he disembarked from the lunar module. I forget what they call the lunar module. And that was his first thing. As soon as you get there, get the flag unfurled, get it planted. This is an American mission. There were tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that worked toward this greatness. Remember the space race started by Kennedy? Eagle, thank you. Thank you, Bo. So here you have John F. Kennedy, one of the most inspirational leaders in the history of America. And to me, that was one of John F. Kennedy's top, if not his biggest, inspirational contribution. The fact that he got all these people on the same page, and it was so bizarre back when he started it, when he said it, when he started the space race. But keep in mind, we were racing against the Soviet Union, and they had beaten us a few times. So this is a classic example of when America puts its mind to something, when America pulls together. It's almost, dare I say, and I don't want liberals driving off the road if you're heading to the shore right now, it's almost Trumpian. It's kind of like we're all going to pull together because America's first. We're gonna beat them to the moon. We're gonna put Americans first here. We're gonna beat them at this. We're gonna do better than that. That is a vast part of the American spirit. And what have they done? According to Ryan Gosling, by the way, it's getting great reviews at the Venice Film Festival, and now I kind of know why. Here's what Ryan Gosling said. He said, and keep in mind, Ryan Gosling is Canadian. And many of you know, and this is not, and I know Mark Stein is a Canadian illegal immigrant. We're aware of that. He's told me this before. So this is not a Mark Stein Canadian. This is some of the other leftist Canadians. So remember, Canadians do lecture us from time to time. I think this was widely regarded in the end, says Ryan Gosling, as a human achievement. That's how we choose to view it. So we left that scene out. I also thought Neil was extremely humble, as were many of these astronauts. He was reminding everyone that this was just the tip of the iceberg. He also went on to say that Neil didn't view himself as an American hero, etc. And the big reason was, according to the producers and Ryan Gosling, Neil Armstrong walking on the moon and NASA putting Americans on the moon transcended, are you ready? Country and borders. Everywhere we look, the left is taking inches and then miles. Everywhere we look. Of all the things to write out of a historic film, they chose to take out the American flag and the fact that America got us to the moon first, and in the process, we beat the Russians. This is the absurdity. This is what the left does. Globalists love this. Leftists loved it. They rewrite and edit history to fit whatever they need. Maybe it's a campaign, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a book. You'd have to check with Oliver Stone on the extent of it. But that's just amazing. So you've got a whole generation of people that take the moonwalk for granted, by the way, because, you know, how many times have you heard, and then Rush brings this up all the time because he has 742 iPhones in his closet, that there's more technology in one iPhone than there is on in all of NASA. Rush probably has more technology in his house than the entire country, possibly. But so you have a generation of Americans who aren't as excited as maybe you and I were if we're over 40, over 50, over 60, about walking on the moon, and they took the best part out, that when Americans put their mind to something, they kick more butt than you can even calculate. We'll be right back on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews, and it is Open Line Friday.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
The Friday before Labor Day, and I'm thrilled that you're listening to the Rush Limbaugh Show, and even more excited to be here again. My name's Ken Matthews, here at the EIB Network. Not a lot of people here on the Premier Radio Network floor. It's a lot of people are sneaking out early. In fact, Mike, our sound guy, I just caught. I saw him heading to the parking lot. I said, "Where are you going?" The show's over at 3, and so I caught him. So we're still on the air, and that's good. And you know what else? For the first time, the jackhammers are not in the background. Now, you don't normally hear that, but those of us in the studio and the producing studio and the booth, we can hear it because right outside the window here in New York, they're digging up every square inch of street and building some mega complex of something. I don't know. Someone's making money on it. I got to tell you, construction is booming across the country and really in New York. When I rode into New York, I drive in now. I decided to stop taking the bus. It's a long, tragic story, but there's too much tragedy on television today, so I won't tell you about my tragic bus story. So I drove in. Now, I shouldn't mention this. It's too late. I already started. It's too late. I already went down the road. I'm coming in. I'm heading north on 95 because I come in from Pennsylvania. That's my home state. My home markets are there. And there's a lot of construction on the Lincoln Tunnel. So a lot of people are breaking off, and they're going to GWB, George Washington Bridge, or they're going to the Holland Tunnel or whatever. And I said, you know what? I'm feeling good. I'm running early. I got plenty of time. I checked in yesterday. I said, I'm going to go through the Lincoln Tunnel. And I got through the Lincoln Tunnel faster than I ever got through the Lincoln Tunnel in the last 5 years. So now I just ruined it. I'm sorry. But see, the thing is, everybody sees all the orange signs, single lane, slow down, work area, and they think, oh, my God, the Lincoln Tunnel is going to be worse than it normally is. And if you're familiar with the Lincoln Tunnel, it is the tunnel's designed for like 43 cars, and there's 842,000 at any given time. Some of them have their lights on, some of them don't. Some people are tweeting, some are not. Some people have their windows open because they like the smell, some people don't, etc. But I breezed right through it. So that's the trick. That's the trick. Schedule all your vacations around construction zones. Go on Google, go on your app. Oh, I see something's going on in South Carolina. Looks like they're tearing up that road. Let's drive right through it. Because, see, it scares everybody else away, especially if you have a sport ute. 800-282-2882. My name's Ken Matthews, filling in for El Rushbo. We're going to take some calls because it's Open Line Friday. So much to talk about. We got that idiot candidate out in Illinois, the things he said about Donald Trump. And what makes it worse, not only were they ignored by the crowd, which tells you so much about the crowd, they were ignored by the news media. How are you running for Congress? I'll go ahead and tell you now. This guy's running for Congress. His name's Sean Casten. And he publicly said, in many ways, and I don't mean to sound overtly, he said, I don't want to sound overtly hyperbolic on this, but Trump and Osama bin Laden have a tremendous amount in common. This is what the candidate, one of the candidates in Illinois, Democrat, of course, Sean Casten said about President Trump. He went on to say this. They have both figured out how to use the bully pulpit to activate marginalized young men. Every demagogue has done this. Find a group of angry people and give them something to be angry at. Whew. Doesn't that sound like an angry comment, though? Anyway, he said this a few days ago in Wheaton, Illinois. And when you listen to it, it's online. No attendees can be heard objecting. Nobody goes, oh. Nobody says, oh, come on, man. No, they're all in lockstep with it. And I didn't mean to say lockstep. Don't read it. That's not a dog whistle. Lockstep is not a dog whistle. Only monkey is. 800-282-2882. Where have we arrived in politics where a guy is comfortable saying, you know, Trump and Osama bin Laden, they're pretty much the same. How did we get to that point? I'll tell you. You can thank the Democrat Party for it. And then I heard a guy, one more, then we'll go to the phones. I heard a guy this morning, was watching news. Everybody says, don't watch it because, you know, I'm watching news. There's this, I'm not going to mention his name, because if you know him, you know he's a moron. And I don't need to give him any free publicity. And his exact quote was, he was talking to the news guy. There was a Republican guy there and a Democrat guy there. And the Republican guy said, now, you know that President Trump has probably received the most bias, at times hateful coverage of any candidate. And the Democrat said, the scripted response, oh, no. This has happened before. I mean, look at the way they treated Obama and blah, 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 blah. And then he started spouting. He should have stopped right there because those are the talking points. But then he started spouting foolishness like, look at they fired Agent Strzok for one tweet. This guy was a dingbat. Your call's coming up.
To Ken Matthews on the Rush Limbaugh program.
And back to the phones we go on Open Line Friday. Glad you're listening and getting a lot of comments and emails. By the way, you can follow me, if you'd like, on Facebook, at Ken Matthews, and Twitter, at Ken Matthews. And don't forget about Rush 24/7. We'll elaborate on that a little bit later on the show. But you can always go to rushlimbaugh.com and find a whole new world that you can share with your relatives, and that makes a wonderful gift. In fact, that's what I would do. If you've got a birthday or something coming up and you have a really hardcore liberal, drunk on Kool-Aid all the time relative. Your sister's brother-in-law's husband, and he hates Trump. Get him rushed 24/7. I mean, what could be better? Think about it as far as education. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show, and the number's 800-282-2882. Let's go to Scott right around the corner in Staten Island, New York. How are you?
Hey, Ken. How you doing, bud?
Good. Welcome.
I just want to say something about this kid up in Canada, this Ryan Gosling. First off, everybody hates us around the world, and they're getting to hate us more and more every day, Canadians included. They've always hated us. They've always been jealous. For him to say that it's, what did he say? It's a human thing, for what our astronauts did on the moon?
Yeah, he said that what NASA did and Neil Armstrong and Bud Aldrich did transcended country and borders, and it just made me cringe because that's what the globalists and leftists want to eliminate. They want to eliminate culture and borders and countries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it was, it was an American, we as Americans, we went up there, we did what we had to do on the moon. We did it 6 times. I don't see any other country that went up there and did what we did. They're constantly erasing history, no matter what it is. And it just keeps on going every single solitary day, Ken. And it's all because that we have this great president right now in office who's doing an amazing job. And before that, it started with the other guy that was in office for 8 years. Yeah, what he did to this country is just unbelievable. He took out all the spirit in the people and other countries respecting us. And that's why we are in this position now. And the left just hate us, and they hate the president.
Now, Scott, let me ask you about Staten Island, if I can. What's the ratio over there? Do you have a lot of family members or neighbors that are going to throw a brick through your window if you put a Trump sign up?
Oh, no. I would say probably out here the ratio conservative to the Demonist Party, I would say I would probably say we're probably 75-25 over here.
Wow.
In favor of us. And it's probably the only borough like that.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
I think Hillary took the other ones pretty heavily.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ken. You go up and down, different. You go up and down neighborhoods in this borough, and there are blocks literally with American flags all over the place. It's very, very. It's patriotic. It really is, and we do not like the left over here. We do not like that. We don't. It's amazing because you go into a store over here and people are talking about the president and what a great job he's doing and what a horrible job the left is doing and why they're doing all these things against the president.
Well, Scott, I appreciate the call. I like your passion, obviously your patriotism, and Scott brought up a great point, and I didn't even think this at first, but it's staring me right in the face. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump triggered the producers into doing this. Not literally. I don't think any producer said because of Trump, but think about the position. Trump is out there doing the exact opposite of what President Obama did, where President Obama would show up at the UN and say, man, I'm really sorry about my country. I mean, we really have a lot to be embarrassed about. I'm sorry this is happening. Trump shows up and says, you're not paying enough, and if you don't, you're in deep caca. Now, that's the difference. And Trump shows up with North Korea, the same thing. It's interesting when you look at the rebuilding or restructuring of NAFTA, which Donald Trump said he would do as a candidate. Now, as President Trump, he's doing it. Isn't it interesting that while he was meeting with Mexico, I turned on CNN and I heard more grown liberal men crying about, my gosh, he's going to destroy trade. It's going to be a trade war. This is going to be so horrific. And Trump said, look, we're going to put this Mexico thing together by the end of the week, and Canada's going to get wind of it, and they're going to be on board. And what happens Wednesday night? The one woman from Canada, I forget her official title. She's up there pretty high, though, in the cabinet. She leaves Europe, comes back, and meets with Trump before the end of the week. So while he's negotiating with Mexico, who, from what we see, Mexico's pretty happy with the retooling of NAFTA. And one of the things Trump did, which, again, you can't let get out if you're in the liberal media, is he said it's imperative that we raise the price, we raise the wage of workers in Mexico. And this is something you don't hear about. So not only he wants to make America great again, he wants to go to the next level with workers in America, but he also is trying to put together deals, like he said, on the campaign trail, which is there's no reason why Europe and America and countries in Europe or on the Korean Peninsula, there's no reason that we all can't have a profitable interaction. Right now, it's lopsided. And we need to make it fair for, number one, it has to be the best for American workers, and it'll be fair for other workers. Mexico came to the table and said, wow, I think this is going to work. And while they were saying that, Canada said, wow, this is going to work. So all this is happening. And I think the backdrop, and of course the editing of this flag out of the movie, taking the American flag scene out of the First Man movie about Neil Armstrong, that is the most iconic scene. To me, that would be if you had a movie about the Marines and you left off the Battle of Iwo Jima. You left that out. That would be no different. If you had a movie about the Marines and they said, you know, this is kind of, that was World War II. There are a lot of people that fought in World War II. We don't need to have the Marines on top of Mount Suribachi putting that flag up. Yeah. Oh, no, this is an American market. Yeah. Yeah, I can't hear you. I just lost audio now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was at the Venice. It was at the Venice Film Festival a few days ago with Ryan, and it opens in a couple weeks. I just saw the previews for it last week during the Black Klansman. It's called First Man. It's huge. It's got a huge American cast in it. You're going to recognize a lot of the people in the cast, like in Mission Control. Ryan Gosling just happens to play Neil Armstrong. So I think because of the atmosphere and this culture from the left, but the climate that's been created, like stinking America, I mean, that emanates from the left. That doesn't come from the right. That's never come from the right. You know, you could say what you want about the right and conservatives, the, quote, right wing, the GOP, whatever, but one thing that's never come from right or right of center is, damn this country. That doesn't come from our side. That's an excuse that the left generates. And that's why you get so much of that from the left. The left is they're not a fan of big business. They're not a fan of too much success. Oh, they like success if it's Tom Hanks or Steve Jobs. They like that kind of success. But you got to take it easy on the other success. And this is the problem. And who knows how many people are on this movie? When you get right down to it, how many people in the editing room have a chip on their shoulder about Trump? Now, I know that sounds kind of conspiratorial, but what other reason, seriously, would you take the story of NASA's greatest accomplishment in America and Neil Armstrong and the astronauts and the Apollo program and how everything happened and how Neil Armstrong started back as a pilot, all this stuff, and leave the American flag off the moon? Who does that? People that aren't really that juiced on America. That's the people who do it. Because when someone says, hey, we should leave the American flag out, the Americans should say, we're not leaving the American flag out. It was an American operation. Just like there are successes around the world with other countries, and they should have their flags fly in their historical representation. What are we going to do now? Are we going to let the left just go through every textbook in school? We're already doing that. We've already allowed the left to go through schools and change everything from the KKK and how it started and who voted for whom and who was for civil rights and what Abraham Lincoln said or didn't say. We've allowed that to happen. We've allowed Al Gore to go in and teach weather, for God's sake. He's an idiot. And that Inconvenient Truth movie has been proven so incorrect. Look at what we're comfortable with. And this is why this got up under my skin. You know, we all have something that gets under the skin. And I just thought, how did it get to that point before someone stopping in and say, well, you can't do this, because he had like 3 things he had to do when he got on there. He had to do some technical stuff, and he had to put up the American flag, and then he had to radio back and whatever. How do you take that out? 800-282-2882. Back to the phones next when we come back on the Rush Limbaugh Show. It's Open Line Friday.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Have you snuck out yet? Have you snuck away from work for Labor Day weekend? My name's Ken Matthews. Thank you so much for listening to the Rush Limbaugh Show. Learn more at rushlimbaugh.com about Rush Limbaugh 24/7 and the Limbaugh Letter and hearing Rush whenever you can. rushlimbaugh.com. The number is 800-282-2882. And it's Open Line Friday, which is always exciting, especially when so many things are happening in our world, in our country, in our great country. It is a wonderful time to be alive. I say that often, but this is for someone who is a history and political science geek, as you may be, especially if you listen to the show. I'm not calling you a geek. I would be the geek. Could this be a more exciting time? This president, the things that are going on. I was just reading, I get this global security report from the military, and I was just reading that we have reestablished the U.S. Navy's Second Fleet. You may not have known that was disbanded in 2011. Yes, for cost cutting and what have you. That was under the Obama administration. But think about that. We were shrinking our military, growing the amount of people that work for the IRS, shrinking the people that work for the military. It's just it's weird, isn't it? There's so many distinct differences between the left and the right. You know, I want to cut government programs that can be manipulated by fraud and give the military better equipment. I just want us to have the biggest, hairiest military on the planet. We do, and now it's even going to get better. And when the Second Fleet comes back, I'm going to feel even better about Russia and China, because without a Second Fleet and without our kick-butt Navy everywhere, you can't really keep an eye on the world because of how much of it is covered with water. And I learned that from an Al Gore movie, that the world is covered with water. Let's go to Greg in Cleveland, Ohio. Greg, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hello, Ken.
Hi.
I just want to point out some irony before I get to a quick story that I find it interesting. My take is that had John McCain won the election in 2008 and had beaten Obama, I believe the mainstream media would have been so sore each and every day that had he passed away this year, following 2 years after being out of office, there's no way he would have gotten the fanfare that he has as a senator.
I think that's a pretty fair assessment based on the behavior of the media and their nonstop worship of Obama. I think the most despicable thing is how they continue even now to keep the facade going to protect Obama's legacy. I mean, when is the media going to start reporting on things other than protecting the people they like?
Correct. In fact, notice there hasn't been any reporting about what's been going on in Germany, the 12,000 people that showed up in the streets 2 days ago after the immigrant had taken the lives of 2 people.
It's interesting that you bring that up, Greg, because I think, and I can't believe I'm saying this with a straight face, but it's true. The New York Times has that on the cover. It's on the front page this morning. That Germany thing you're talking about, but they're the only place I found it.
I haven't seen anything on the internet as far as MSN homepage. But I do want to get to a quick point regarding the DeSantis comment, and that is a quick story. When I was younger, I can remember our family get-togethers. They would start out, maybe discussing, lighter issues like sports and current events, and by the end of the night, the topic of conversation would lead towards, more stringent topics. And I can remember him getting pretty passionate. My grandmother would say, "Oh, they must be talking about the Maine monkey business," referring to politics.
That's a great point. And just so you know, Greg, and I thank you for your call, you just triggered a bunch of liberals. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show. We'll be right back. I'm Ken Matthews.
You're listening to the EIB Network. For Rush Limbaugh from the formerly blue state of Pennsylvania. Heard on WHP 580 Harrisburg and 1210 WPHT Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Matthews.
Thank you so much for that introduction. What a great day. Big 3-day weekend for a lot of people. A lot of managers will have a 4 or 5-day weekend. It is the Rush Limbaugh Show. Mike is laughing. It's true. It's true. You know darn well there are managers at your company that did their voicemail Thursday afternoon, and it said something like this. Thanks for calling. I'm not in because of the Labor Day weekend. And that'll be the same message until like next Tuesday or Wednesday. 800-282-2882. My name's Ken, and here's what I wanted to share, and then we go back to Open Line Friday. And this is so incredible. Every single day, I think one of the funniest lines President Trump used to say, and he continues to say it, but when he says it at rallies, and he goes, "The winning. You're going to get so sick of the winning. We keep winning. We're winning. You're going to say, stop with the winning." And it just cracks me up. I don't know why, but it's true. Here's an example. President Trump told House Speaker Paul Ryan yesterday, this was in a letter, "We're getting rid of pay raises for most civilian federal employees that were planned for January." Yes. You want to know why millions of people like Donald Trump? Because of that. Right there. Because of that. Donald Trump isn't saying, "Oh, no, what will the public employee unions, the federal employee unions, what are they going to do if I don't, how am I going to get votes?" He cares about what the working men and women feel. And that's why so many of our views about the IRS, about the FBI, about illegal immigration, about trade, about wealth, about education, they align with this president. No federal pay hikes for most civilian federal employees. Now, the reason I emphasize civilian and the reason he did is because he has already raised wages for the military, and they should have been raised. There are a lot of great federal employees. You may know some. You might be one. And you know how difficult it is to be a federal employee coming out of 8 years of Obamuanism and being a conservative. You have to hide. You have to stay in the closet. But here's a guy who looks at the big picture, and he just informed Congress that the 2.1% across-the-board raise for most workers, as well as separate locality pay increases averaging 25%, can no longer be expected. He said it's just not going to happen. We need to maintain fiscal sustainability and stay on the course where we are with this economy. Now, again, this will upset a lot of people at CNN and a lot of people that don't like Trump. Tough. This is how you do it. This is how you stay economically sustainable. You use tariffs, use them as a tool to leverage people away from tariffs. That's how you do it. You say, you've been doing this tariff thing on us for so long, banging us over the head with it. Here, this is what it feels like. Ow, ooh, ow, ow, ow. Those were tariffs, by the way. Watch what happens when the tariffs go away. What did the leader of the EU say this is not a joke setup. It sounds like it, though, doesn't it? The leader of the EU walks into a bar. There's a priest and a rabbi. No. A couple weeks ago, President Trump met with the leader of the EU, and I remember Paul Krugman, he was either predicting or hoping for or saying this is the end of the world, which he does on a regular basis, monthly, with the New York Times. He's the guy that's always wrong on the economy. Well, at least he has been for the last 2 years. So the EU head says to Trump, our goal is zero tariffs on everyone. And that's Trump's goal. And that's your goal and my goal. Nobody likes tariffs. You cannot have free trade with tariffs. So let's review. We're getting rid of the tariffs. We're redoing NAFTA. There will be no federal raises for civilian federal employees. Look, let's face it. There's a lot of civilian federal employees that should not be civilian and federal employees. The government is the largest employer, and it shouldn't be. Why is that? Sticking with why does the government do what it does, Trump is now going to boost retirement savings. He's signing an executive order, probably later today in Charlotte. He's at a rally heading into the Labor Day weekend. He's signing an executive order that does this. The Treasury Department's going to review the rules for mandatory withdrawals from 401k plans and individual retirement accounts. To simplify this, most of you know that when you turn 70 and a half, there are rules that haven't been updated since 2002 that say, okay, you're 70 years old, you must start withdrawing a certain percentage of your tax-free saved funds. Now, in many people's opinion, that's an effort by the government to control as much of your money. What if you don't want to draw it out at 70? What if you want to wait till you're 75? What if you want to keep racking up tax-free money because you bust your tail to earn it and save it? And savings is always better than debt for the entire economy. That's been proven time and time again by economists, despite what Obama said. He was a community organizer, so he would know the economy. When you're alive and when you're dead, the government does not like you passing on wealth to your family, whether you're alive or whether you're dead. They don't like you having a lot of wealth. And when I mean the government, I mean people that are anti-constitutional in the government, people that are liberals, people that are progressives. There are people in the government that think you should only be so wealthy. And what if you want to squirrel your money away for your life and then leave it to your kids or leave it to your best friend or leave it to your partner? Why does the government have any role in that? Because the government's never going to be able to control all of us unless they control all our money. That's why they're so obsessed with controlling all our money. President Trump knows that. So just in the last 2 weeks, 3 nice hits out of the park. We're going to cut back on what we're paying federal civilian employees. We're going to give you more opportunities to save money in your retirement account, right? And we redid NAFTA. We're almost done with NAFTA. So again, I ask you, why does your brother-in-law keep crying about Donald Trump? 800-282-2882. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews. It's Open Line Friday. We go to Virginia Beach, Virginia. This is Joe. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Hi.
And speaking of winning, the thing that people fundamentally misunderstand about the space race is they make the mistake of divorcing context from history. And what you have to understand is that at the time, it was purely about a clash of ideologies. It was about freedom and democracy versus communism. And President Kennedy knew this. In fact, few know that he, even prior to making his famous speech, polled visiting heads of state from developing countries, and he asked them, what would you have me do, give you more aid next year or use that money to beat the Russians in the space race? And they told him, Mr. President, I wish I could tell you to give me the money, but you must defeat the Soviets. You must beat them to the moon. They understood that it was of critical importance to freedom everywhere. And that's what it was all about. And you have to remember, too, those astronauts, They were fighter pilots. They weren't scientists. They weren't going there to collect moon rocks. They displayed incredible bravery and courage because they were going to win on the battlefield of space in the next frontier. And when Neil Armstrong planted that flag on the moon, he was declaring to all, freedom and the hope that springs from it will always win, and communism will never prevail. And that is lost on so many people generations later.
Joe, that is so brilliantly put, and I'm so glad you brought it up because that's incredible. We were racing against the communists because who knows the technological advances and the edge that oppressive governments would have over us if the communists got there first. I'm so glad you brought that up. And this is just another opportunity to remind people that, and I know there's new listeners joining Rush Limbaugh every day, you're going to find better analysis and better commentary in the audience of the Rush Limbaugh show than you will find on your major news networks or your cable news networks. I kid you not. Joe is a great example of that. And the other thing, and when Joe was wrapping up, I thought even Neil Armstrong said that. He said one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And the fact that he was an American and said that, I think that speaks volumes. Because when you look at the level of graciousness and contributions that America has been willing to make, it's not always monetary, but I think when you go country to country, we can hold our heads high as being a pretty gracious, open, understanding nation because of how we came about, because of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, because of the mistakes we made, because of the civil rights corrections we had to fix. We had to fix things that were broken, and we're still constantly doing that. And when someone says, well, we're going to make a movie about the first man on the moon, but we're not going to put the American flag on there, it's an insult. It's an insult to the greatness of America. Why would you take that out? I mean, think about it. And it was an American that said those wonderful words. He didn't say, Neil Armstrong didn't put the American flag down and say, we're Americans, we kick ass. He might have been thinking that. But he immediately directed the greatness of the result of that work and mission that started with John F. Kennedy. He directed it to the whole world. So I don't know about you, but I might take a flag when I go see the movie and just wave it around. I might just wave it around. I might take a whole bunch of flags and just be throwing them at people. I might be throwing popcorn at people. And if you're walking around with a I'm with her T-shirt, I might hit you in the head with a dot or a Skittle. I'm just telling you. That's it. That's how rough it's going to get at the movie theater, people. I'm Ken Matthews. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show, 800-282-2882. More coming up.
Have you downloaded Rush's radio?
He said that the jackhammer folks are back outside our window, and it's my fault that somebody probably was listening to the Rush Limbaugh Show, and they called up the job site and said, why aren't you guys doing that? So there you go. Thank goodness you can't hear it, though. You can't hear. They can hear it, and I think Bo's beginning to enjoy it because it's in the call screening room, which is great. 800-282-2882. It's Open Line Friday on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews. Always excited to be here, and great calls coming in. Thank you, as always. And I meant that, and I know Rush does as well. Some of the analysis and observations from this audience so far exceed what people are getting paid good money to do on cable news networks. It's hysterical, is it not? Have you ever watched The View? Have you ever listened to The View? When they start talking things like the Constitution or immigration, it's more entertaining than a Saturday Night Live sketch. Actually, it is, because Saturday Night Live, they've allowed themselves to become so angry about Donald Trump, they don't have fun anymore. At least Saturday Night Live had fun with Ronald Reagan, and they had fun with George W. Bush. and even occasionally with Bill Clinton. But there's a level of bitterness. And the thing is, Alec Baldwin does a great Donald Trump. And I just wish if they could just write more funny stuff instead of, oh, I know what we'll do. This sketch will get rid of Trump. Maybe we can have him impeached if the sketch is, if it's cutting enough, if it's vicious enough. It's just not funny. And the thing is, Trump is funny. And early on when he was running, he did have kind of an orange hue to him. People would remember when people called Donald Trump orange, the big orange man? Remember the orange balloon over London? Did you see the new balloon they put up? They put the mayor of London up. Did you see it? In a bikini. Now that's funny. That's how you respond to that. I would love if someone made a giant balloon of me. Well, not today. Let's go to Linda in Bridgewater, New Jersey, home of that really big fancy mall. Hi, Linda. You're on Rush Limbaugh.
Hi, Ken. Pleasure to talk to you. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
The reason I'm calling in, I've been thinking this for the longest time. I really feel that Jeff Sessions has kind of been the 800-pound gorilla in the room all along. And I was thinking about, the confirmation hearings and how they called him a racist and all these things. And then he was confirmed, and his actions thereafter just made me think that possibly, I don't know, is he the firewall? Was he put there? Because without him, we wouldn't have any investigations at all. We wouldn't have Rosenstein. We wouldn't have Mueller. And I really feel like, they made a point to make it sound like the Democrats that they didn't want him there. He's a racist. He's this. He's that. And then he's put in place, and it's almost like Loretta Lynch is still there. And I really feel like I think the pundits also are giving him a pass. I'm tired of hearing, Jeff Sessions isn't up to the job. He's in the corner playing with Legos. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Legos.
I know, I love Legos. But I kind of think because this plot seems to be woven so deeply that it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the powers that be decided they wanted to put him there.
And Linda, when you say powers that be, you mean the Trump administration?
I don't know.
See, that's what I can't figure out.
I don't mean Trump. Somebody recommended that he hire Sessions. Somebody recommended Rosenstein.
That's a good point.
Who are those people
that
told him to do that? It's kind of like The Godfather with Michael, when they tell Michael, whoever comes with you to the meeting is the traitor. I know that sounds kind of corny, but in a way, Trump was not experienced. He was taking people's word for it, and I think whoever recommended that Sessions be in there really had some devious thoughts in mind.
Now, do you still think, Linda, that Sessions as an attorney general is still of value to the Trump administration, or do you think it would be good if Trump just cleared him out as soon as possible?
Well, I think he needs to clear him out, but I was just listening to Karl Rove on television, and it seems like the establishment Republicans, they're scared to death of him getting rid of Sessions. And that just, to me, it rings a bell of alarm for me. They want Sessions there. And for that reason, I think he should be eventually removed.
Linda, very good observation. So it's funny what you said about the establishment Republicans, because they're scared of most things, not just the Jeff Sessions thing. They're scared of everything. But the fact that establishment Republicans want him there, it does kind of fall into your theory. And it all started like dominoes when Jeff Sessions recused himself from the initial investigation, which he had every right to take part in. Yet he said, I'm going to recuse myself because of a conflict of interest. Yet he didn't have to. So that has always troubled me as well. The initial quote, did Russia impact the investigation? We'll be back with more of Open Line Friday. I'm trying to read what he's saying. I thought there'd be younger chicks around here. Why is everybody so old? I don't know. Al Sharpton's there. He's a must. Poor guy. He's got to go back. He's going to summer school for like another few months to learn how to spell. Why would you have Al Sharpton come back after he misspelled one of your biggest hits? Why would you? Whose idea was that? Did someone say, who spelled it respect? Let's have him say that again. 800-282-2882. The Rush Limbaugh Show, open line Friday, always fun. Let's go out to Wyoming. Casper, Wyoming. This is a thrill. I looking at you right on the map here, Nancy. Right below Montana.
Right.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for taking my call. I've got a question. When you're on for Rush, you talk about all these movies that you go to, and the only way Hollywood's going to get a message from us is to not buy their product. I mean, hit them in their wallet and just stop going to movies and stop buying Broadway tickets and just don't support them.
Well, I do agree that if the product is garbage, and I'm the first one to tell you if it is. I mean, there's some real garbage out there. But I also do agree, and a lot of times I do this because it's so hard to find good family films. You know, a good film that you, for example, are you a Mission Impossible fan?
No.
I mean, his latest one was pretty good. The whole family can go. It's funny. It's you know, in other words, I do not believe that every movie has a liberal progressive message. I do believe that Hollywood is dominated by the left, and I think sometimes it's overt, and it's sad that it's that overt. But there are conservatives in Hollywood, and they make good movies as well. So I don't want to boycott the whole thing, is what I'm saying.
Well, you're right. There are good movies. I mean, I just haven't gone for a long time because I'm so tired of their liberal comments when they're not on screen. You know, what the comments that they make. So I just stopped buying their product a long time ago. But we just need more faith-based films.
I think, you know what? I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of faith-based films coming out, more so than you think. In fact, I would even recommend Google faith-based films, and you'll be shocked. There's like 2 that just came out this last couple of weeks. One is about a veteran, and one I think is about a firefighter and the family. But and you know who else is doing great things? Tyler Perry is probably one of the best. I think he's one of the best movie makers out there. And he's doing family film, faith-based, you know, Christian-driven. They're not bitter. They're not angry. And you get a good laugh, too. So, but I hear what you're saying, Nancy. I mean, let's face it. A lot of it is garbage, you know, and it's one of the reasons that, you know, some movie houses are failing because of that.
Well, that's true. Well, thanks for taking my call. You always do a great job when you're on for Rush.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's so interesting. I talked about the film. Which film was it that now I forgot the name of it, and I had. Oh yes, it was Ready Player One. Ready Player One. I talked about the last time I filled in for Rush, and I got several nice emails from this audience saying you were right. That was a fun family film. You know, appreciate the tip. It's hard to find a film now that you could take your 9-year-old son and your 15-year-old daughter and the wife, and you can all go to a movie and not wince or have to explain something in the car on your way home. That's the challenge. It would be great to just get through. And as a family, I can understand that. And then also there's just the leftist stuff. Like, that's why I warned you about the Spike Lee film. I happen to enjoy it. I thought it was historically accurate. I thought it was funny. It was well written. I thought it was brilliantly cast. I'm talking about the Black Klansman. But at the end, I'm giving you the warning, the disclaimer. It's standard Spike Lee. He's not a big fan of America. He's not a big fan of Trump. And he wants to try to get you ticked off on the way out. So he'll do it if you let it get to you. But that doesn't mean he can't make a good movie. And what was the other one that I saw? This has been out for a while, Black Panther. I thought Black Panther was a great movie, and I think people sold it short because the pre-sell on Black Panther was very political. And just because of the climate now that the Democrats are trying to keep alive, the Democrats are trying to keep that whole race war vibe alive. You know, that whole, it's a black and white thing. Everything's a black and white thing. What are you ordering for dinner? I don't know, but it's a black and white thing. And the Black Panther was really a wonderful movie about family, I thought. I mean, you had a great dynamic between a brother and a sister. You had a great dynamic between parents. You had just some really fun moments in that movie. Now, my kids saw it, and my oldest son's only comment was, I think they're, what do they call it, Mike? Is it IG, or what do they call those graphics or whatever? CGI? Thank you. CGI. That's what my oldest son said. He said, I thought the movie was pretty good, Dad, but the CGI could have been a lot stronger. I mean, maybe they should have brought in the Star Wars people. I agree, though. What are you looking at me like that for, Mike? I thought Black Panther CGI was good, but he had a good point. Some of those big creatures at the end, they were kind of, come on, man. And you have to understand, this generation, they get better entertainment on their phone. They get better quality on their iPad than theaters used to have back in the day. Think back to when you used to go to a drive-in theater. Or maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't think back to that. Maybe it's bad memories for you. Let's go to Pat in Enterprise, Alabama. Pat, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hi, Ken. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
I appreciate what the content that you have on today. Hey, I just wanted to make a quick note. This whole thing with John Brennan losing his security clearance, there's a good reason for that. Way back in 2009, I believe it was, late 2009, there was an article in Time magazine, and it was called "Who is John Brennan?" because nobody apparently knew who he was back then. And the article highlights how he owned a security firm and had information on Obama and on Mitt Romney at the time. It was pretty glaring how much information he had on the two of them, so they put him to work in the Obama administration, but he couldn't get a security clearance. So they were going to take him right into the CIA, but they couldn't get the security clearance for him, so he couldn't get in there. They had to put him as some assistant director to the something in the NSA, and it also highlighted how he was doing a lot of dirty little missions out of Eglin Air Force Base.
Wow. And this was in Time.
Yeah.
Time magazine.
Yeah, and that was in Time magazine.
In 2009. So, this points to the fact, Pat, that, and this has been going on for years, not only does the news media drop the ball, but I don't think the people in charge of policing the police in government, I'm glad President Trump said that at the rally last night. He made the comment, and Geraldo made a comment earlier today, and he said, oh, that's so unpresidential. I'm so sick and tired of hearing people say what unpresidential is. I mean, Bill Clinton, one of his rape victims, put out a book this year. I'm going to say that's unpresidential. I'm going to say if a woman you raped wrote a book about it, I don't know if you were acting presidential. But when a president says the FBI better get its act together or I'm going to have to get involved more closely, there's nothing unpresidential about that. The FBI leadership has proven they're just as juvenile and incompetent as other people in government. And that's just unprofessional. And this is a great example. What we're learning about John Brennan and plus his political ideology. I think if you have a political ideology where you are so pro-communist, pro-leftist, I don't even know if you should be in our government. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but I just think that how can you be in a law enforcement or military defense position to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States where you're more impressed with the Communist Manifesto? And there are people in government that are more impressed with the Communist Manifesto. They're more left than they are constitutional. And I always scratch my head over that. I think maybe Strzok was one of them, and his girlfriend Paige. But we'll never know because the media will not investigate them. They're busy with Stormy Daniels. I'm Ken Matthews in for Rush Limbaugh. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
In the hall, talking to Allie about RushLimbaugh.com, which is the coolest website on the planet. And one of the cool things about when you guest host for Rush, you get a little space on RushLimbaugh.com, and we were talking about Trump, and we were talking about McCain, and and I was enjoying the conversation because I have to say this. I don't say this a lot, but the Trump team is very enjoyable to work with, and you find yourself during the break having these great conversations, and then Oh, I'm the Rush team. I'm sorry. I meant the Rush team. I meant the Rush team. I'm thinking of Trump, but I'm talking about Rush. The Rush team is very enjoyable to work with. You find yourself, as you know, we get in these conversations, and then out of nowhere, someone goes, 30 seconds, and then you have to run across the building. It's tough. It's tough. The Rush Limbaugh Show, 800-282-2882. Dave in, what is the name of that? Karma? What is it?
Chama, Chama.
Chama. Oh, I like that. What does that mean? Does that mean something?
It means Red River.
I like it. Chama, New Mexico. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show.
I'll get straight to it. Good morning. Well, good day. I got two things. I think that Mr. Trump should refurbish PBS in order to have something to fight against Facebook and Google, and have real news for one thing with fact, and editorial that's opinion. That's all about that. Now, the second thing is I'm going to talk to you about my state, New Mexico. It's a Democratic dominion, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
We got in the news about those terrorists, those 5 terrorists, that should have been prosecuted by the federal government. Now, we just had a boondoggle. They told us that we have $1.5 billion in our coming up budget. Instead of investing it, right away they start talking about spending it.
Mm-hmm.
We are an oil and a natural gas-rich state, yet we're a third world country. We can't get these people to do the right thing. First of all, we need more independents and Republicans out here. This state is, in total, is less than 3 million people. Yet we had this Democratic dynasty that wouldn't let our Republican governor do anything worthwhile. And yet they're already thinking about how to spend this $1.5 billion and not invest it in our state's future.
I didn't think there was that few people. I always perceived New Mexico, because of its size, when next to Texas, it's not as big as Texas, but it's certainly as big as Arizona. I didn't think it was only 3 million people.
Yeah, well, that's what it is.
Wow.
I've been listening to Rush since his cupcake and cake sales.
Good for you.
I was a former bus driver in Los Angeles, and I had my little pocket radio, and I would be listening to Rush all during the day that I was working. And he's never given any reason not to listen to him. He does a damn good job, and he's a God-fearing man, and I bless him.
Dave, thank you for calling. What a beautiful call. And our heart goes out to the tragic accident that just took place just a few hours earlier today with the bus and the 18-wheeler in New Mexico. It's a horrible tragedy that they're dealing with now, on top of the other things that Dave was discussing. But it's always confused me when you get a state that is oil-rich or gas-rich like New Mexico, the progressive leftist will line up and not take advantage of it. And now it's even more frustrating if there's 3 million people. What are there, 5 million people in New York, Mike? There's about 5, I think there's over 5 million people in New York City, in all 5 boroughs combined. So you got the entire state of New Mexico is gargantuan. Why wouldn't you take advantage and bring some wealth to your state like Alaska did with the natural resources? One thing I never understand about the really extreme environmentalist, I understand people that are pro-environment. My wife is pro-environment. If I forget to recycle, I'm in trouble. We're very environmentally conscious in my home, and we're a conservative home. You're supposed to be a good steward of the earth. You're supposed to take care of things. You're not supposed to go to the bathroom in the river like they do in some cities in China, or dump your waste in the ocean like they do in some countries around the world, which we don't. But I never understand the extremist environmentalists that don't want to touch anything. And if someone said to you, well, if we drill here and we take this and filter that and sell this, we won't have any debt. They're willing to suffer. Well, I'm not going to say they are, because Al Gore, he's one of the nuttiest, and he's worth what, $750 million? It's sad, though. Leftist environmentalists are willing to allow major portions of the population to suffer so they can protect whatever they want to protect. Maybe it's a little beetle, maybe it's a, some type of bird or tree, and sooner or later, you got to put humans first. I mean, I know we're all about America first, but I'd like environmentalists and I'd like PETA to put humans first. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the EIB in for Rush Limbaugh from the formerly blue state of Pennsylvania. Heard on WHP 580 Harrisburg at 1210 WPHT Philadelphia. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Matthews.
What a week it's been, and of course, it's Open Line Friday on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken. Thrilled that you're listening. A challenging week for the families of not only John McCain, but the late Aretha Franklin. And I'm still trying to make sense of the political positioning and opportunism taking place around the death of Aretha Franklin. Bill Clinton's talking now. Eric Holder spoke earlier, former Attorney General of the United States, and I believe the first Attorney General to be held in contempt of Congress, Eric Holder. I don't know why they would be there. But again, I don't know why Al Sharpton was there either. Nor do I know how Joy Behar keeps her job or why Barack Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize. So there's a lot of mysteries floating around. But whenever I look at a memorial of any kind, whether it's a celebrity memorial, whether it's a politician, somebody personal to you that you care and you love, in your family or a friend, I always look at how and what people say, and there's always someone that shows up to the memorial because they want some publicity. And I'm getting a lot of that this week. Getting a lot of it. Getting a lot of that from the McCain coverage and a lot of it from the Aretha coverage. A lot of it. Of course, hats off to Faith Hill and Ariana Grande, who both sang beautifully, and there were other singers as well. See, that part I understand. I don't understand the former Attorney General and Bill Clinton and some of the other folks. And maybe, and this is just a thought, maybe their PR people said, well, I don't know if you want to risk going to the McCain thing. I can get you into the Aretha thing. Let me see who else is sick. Who else might be passing away? Hold on a second. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I don't know. She's got some more time. She's going to be around for a while. Can you imagine that funeral? Holy moly! There's a feature film on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's called RBG. Not to be confused, you military folks, with RPG. But seriously, I'm afraid that this has set a dangerous precedent. I mean, can you imagine the coverage of some other people that, see, all you got to do once you hate Trump and you publicly go against Sarah Palin, you've already scored points with most of the news editors in the country. Back to Open Line Friday, San Antonio, Texas. We're going to go to Robert. Robert, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Yes, sir. Testing. Yes. The point that I wanted to make, sir, thank you for taking my call. We have to do what in the Bible was the test proof, the Berean analysis. I attended a campaign rally of candidate Obama in spring of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about him through, we had the internet in Iraq. I was there 13 months, 2007, 2008. We were like, okay, who's candidate Obama? He's okay, all right. So I went there, and I was interested because I wanted to hear from the horse's mouth. You speak your words. And he said, in essence, at that Petersburg rally, I will be the most expensive president that you have had in history. He didn't get the crowd hyped up over that. He got them hyped up over a war we didn't belong in, or healthcare not being good enough. He hyped it up, and the demographic, the demagoguery, the populism, they were people my age, 22-year-olds. I'm there from Iraq, and I've got 4 years in the Marine Corps, ended up doing 9, and all of a sudden, I'm on the lookout. He said, I'm going to be your most expensive president, and I started telling everybody, and I said, watch out. I hope it's not true. Guess what? He delivered on his campaign promise. I will be your most expensive president. Why are people surprised, negatively surprised about Trump keeping to his campaign promises? You mentioned that at the first hour. Oh, my God. Then you start having, well, he did straw man argument at that rally. He was doing straw man arguments. We don't have a spending problem. It's a paying for it problem.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Sorry to ramble on so much.
Well, Robert, I want to thank you for your service, and that's great insight. The fact that you were at a rally, and one of the biggest bones I have to pick, and I have a ton of them with the mainstream news media because I've lost most respect for most of them. If people just read Obama's first book, and he had 2. He had Dreams of My Father or Dreams from My Father or something. Dreams of My Father, I think. I'm not sure. But I had the original, which I read, and then I read Audacity of Hope. They're 2 different reading styles, but it's that if people would have read the very first book, you would have gotten into his head, because when he wrote it, he hadn't been coached yet. No one coached him and said, whoa, don't go down that road. Don't say that. Or maybe you change this. So you got a sense of what he was all about. And this is a guy who said openly, like Robert had commented on, he doesn't think America spends enough. He doesn't think the government's big enough. He thinks the military's too big. He thinks we don't pay enough taxes. He has a chip on his shoulder about America. He has a chip on his shoulder about a lot of things. He has a chip on his shoulder about England. Everybody was commenting, and what was the recent comment that somebody made about funerals and what have you? And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Barack Obama went to Thatcher's funeral, did he? I don't think he went there. And there were some other things he decided not to go to. And then there were some things he sent representatives to that people were scratching their head about. But this guy, just like Donald Trump, on the campaign trail, he gave a lot away. Now, he didn't give away as much as Donald Trump, because I do think Donald Trump is very open and plain-spoken. And there's no doubt that Obama, he could speak eloquently for, an hour and not say much, and people will swoon. And Trump just cuts to the chase. We're going to drain the swamp. This guy's a liar. This guy's a scumbag. This guy's selling us out, and the news is fake. And everybody's like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Thanks for not candy coating it for us. The Rush Limbaugh Show, 800-282-2882 on the EIB network. My name's Ken Matthews. Glad you're listening. Let's go to Dan in Gregory, Michigan. Dan, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hello, Ken. Thanks for taking my call. I just had 2 points I wanted to bring up. One is about the Clintons and their some responsibility they share in the nuclear threats around the world. I don't know if people remember, but Bill Clinton overrode his State Department when he was president to sell the Chinese accurate guidance systems from a company in the United States. And now Hillary had much to do with selling uranium to the Russians, and the money that their organization got. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is I've been reading the book Compromised. It talks about the FBI agents. Comey, for instance, net worth was $200,000 before he transferred to Lockheed Martin, and he earned $6.5 million in the 4 years that he was there. The deputy FBI, I forget his name, that was fired, they talked about him losing his pension, but I heard somewhere on the radio that he's worth $11 million.
McMaster's?
No, the deputy under Comey.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm drawing a blank now.
I
I know who you're talking about.
Okay, so why are all these FBI agents, and Mueller too, left? It's like they say it's like a revolving door. They go out into private industry, they
Right.
earn big sums of money, and they come back in. I think there's a lot more to this deep state, and I hope that Trump gets to the bottom of it someday. Sessions reminds me of Elmer Fudd. I don't know if they have something on him or if he's just inept, but it's really sickening to watch all this stuff going on and none of the major news reporting any of these things that I've mentioned. Plus, I'm sure there's much more.
Well, Dan,
anyways,
I appreciate your call. I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend, and you brought up great points about, and all this is public knowledge. The most frustrating thing, and some of my friends that are not familiar with talk radio like the millions of you are, they will bring up a comment and they'll hear something on a show. Maybe they'll dabble in it and they'll hear a show. Maybe Rush, maybe me, whatever, in Harrisburg, where my home station is, in central PA. And they'll comment, and they'll say, oh, where do you come up with this stuff? Like what Dan just said. Everything Dan just said is absolutely, it's factual, it's verifiable, and it's true. And the problem is, there are people that believe if the news media doesn't cover it, it didn't happen. Or if the news media doesn't cover it, it's not important. And that is how the news media controls the agenda. That's how they set the agenda. So you're not hearing a lot about Keith Ellison. We had that story last week when we had the author of the article on this show, or the week before, actually. So you're not hearing about that. The news media, there's a news editor, and he decides. He decides if he wants to go further now that we found out the Chinese have allegedly hacked Hillary. The news director will decide, well, no, let's not do any Hillary stuff. I kind of like Hillary. What else we got? Do we got anything on Melania? How about her jacket? That's how it works. That's how it works. You want to know if there's a rhyme or reason to it? Of course there is. Nothing goes over the airwaves in news unless it's cleared. Talk radio is the last live free speech medium on earth. Talk radio. What you're listening to now is the last pure live free speech medium. Somebody can tell you all day long on MSNBC, hey, we're giving you the facts, we're free. No, you're not. No, you're not. Nothing goes out through a newsroom until it's approved. That's why now we're hearing the stories about NBC shutting down the stories on, what's his name? What's the producer's name? Something Stein, the big producer that just plummeled from Weinstein. Yeah. I didn't want to accidentally say, I know there's a Rosenstein. There's a lot of Steins and Steins in the news right now. I didn't want to get the wrong one. But NBC, when whatever his name is, Ronan Farrow, whatever his name was, wanted to cover the story when that was first breaking, NBC said, well, we better back off on that. This is the same kind of news censorship, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but hey, it is talk radio, and it's live, and it's free speech. The same kind of censorship that took place that kept a lid on a lot of the stuff that was going on in the Catholic Church over the years. You got to ask yourself, if news people, if journalists, if they're all about truth to power and breaking the story and making America better, making the world better, protecting the children, making things better for families, then why the hell aren't they breaking the stories that you and I break? You and I break them as citizens. We break stories in our own community walking around about abuse or whatever it may be, law enforcement, taxes, embezzlement. I mean, Pennsylvania government is among one of the most corrupt. And I'm very proud of that, by the way. But seriously, did you ever ask yourself that question? How is it that Dan can follow up on this, or another caller knows about it, and obviously Rush knows about it, but it's not in the news? It's very simple. They're going to cover what they want to cover. So if you ever think to yourself, well, if I don't hear it on the news, then I guess it didn't happen, that's wrong. That's how it's supposed to be. That's what PR is. That's what public relations is. Some things they want to get on the news, and some things they never want the news to get near. And it's the journalist's job to punch through that. It's the journalist's job to follow up on Cuomo as hard as you're going to follow up on DeSantis, and follow up on Hillary as hard as you follow up on Trump. Not happening, though, is it? Open Line Friday continues on the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews, and the number's 800-282-2882.
Wherever you find concentrated.
It's similar to what we were just talking about how the news media picks and chooses not only what they're going to cover, but how they're going to cover it. And when you talk about journalism, journalists will say, well, I want to be a journalist. I want to find the truth. I want to make a difference. I want to impact the community. Okay, you want to impact the community. Do you want to do it on behalf of your political party? Then you should get a talk show, or you should be in politics, or be a spokesperson, or a press agent, or any number of things, or a lobbyist. But if you want to move the political dial, maybe trying to be an objective journalist would be a conflict. I would have a difficult time doing it. I would have a difficult time hiding my beliefs, not speaking about my support for Trump since the very beginning, and my continued support for Trump, and how I think America is exceptional and the greatest country on earth, and how I think the Constitution is genius. I couldn't hide that. So that would make it difficult for me to interact with people like the idiot who was comparing. He's running for Congress in Illinois. He was comparing President Trump to Osama bin Laden. I would have a hard time. I would have a tough time interviewing him. I would say, "What are you, a moron?" So it'd be tough for me to say, "Oh yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. We'll be right back." So I couldn't do that. And that's what's so disingenuous about what's happening. There's a story that proves this point very well, and it's the story of whooping cough. Now, for people who know, this is a life-threatening childhood illness, disappeared in the 40s after the vaccine was developed, and the bottom line, the news media did not want to focus on it because it came back, it kind of started to... There was a resurgence of whooping cough in 2012 and 2014, and it corresponded, and this I know for sure because I know people that work in certain areas of the government and off the record, but did you know that in 2012, the United States had the highest number of whooping cough cases in more than half a century? 20 dead, 48,000 cases. Now, I could see that it corresponded to illegal immigration. My neighbors could see it. A lot of people could see it. Why wasn't it talked about? Remember when all the children were coming in on the train and Nancy Pelosi was trying to register them to vote, and Obama was saying that everybody's welcome here, and Governor Jerry Brown was saying, come on into our state, it's a sanctuary state. Nobody was talking about quarantine tents at the border where children and families were coming in with diseases, whooping cough among them, that we hadn't seen in decades. It's an issue. And I knew it was an issue just by the way people covered it or didn't cover it. So I went back and I found a couple different stories. One jumped out at me. This is from NPR. This is from National Public Radio, and even they had to admit, and this is what, isn't it funny that we have to use this as an indicator? I always check National Public Radio or PBS, and I always run through the facts, and I'm thinking, if they caved in and said it, it must really be bad. And I'm going through the story that National Public Radio did on it, and they said the majority of the whooping cough patients are Latino. And then I read further, and it said the majority are illegal of that group.
Matthews on the Rush Limbaugh program.
Open Line Friday. Is that song called Popcorn? What's this one called? Outer Space, that's right. So, just to circle around for a moment about the whooping cough, if you were wondering why I brought it up, because I think first of all, not only is it an issue this week around the country, and in particular in Georgia, they're having an outbreak, but I personally see more to it, but I wanted to find something else that shed light on it that the news media didn't cover. So I went back to an article from 2014. This was after the big influx of illegal children. Remember when mom and dad were just leaving the kids at the border? They were putting them on trains. Well, then I read this article from NPR. And this is where the news media, they steer the story the way they want. What is the big issue, and what was the big issue in 2016? Illegal immigration. What is a cornerstone issue of President Donald Trump's administration because of the wall and other things? And what are we finding out now with more legitimate research, objective research? We're finding out that President Trump is probably closer to the view of illegal immigration, illegal foreign nationals, than most people thought he was 2 or 3 years ago. In other words, most Americans want illegal foreign nationals removed. Most Americans think there should be some type of barrier, border, wall, or fence, one of the four. And most believe that as of this moment, any illegal foreign national criminal should be deported. That's the majority of what Americans think. Trump brings that to the forefront. But when you look at a story like this, Latino babies are disproportionately affected by whooping cough. It speaks to the lack of access of health insurance that's particularly predominant within the Latino community. But let's read further. Latinos make up 62% of the uninsured. But let's read further. Because many are afraid that signing up for coverage will expose family members who are not lawfully in the U.S. Many parents who enter the country illegally are afraid they will be discovered and deported if they enroll their children, who may be legal immigrants or citizens, into government coverage. So let's review. The child is in the school system. He's on the sports team. Maybe he comes to your kid's birthday party, but a relative is there illegally. So they're not approaching health and wellness and insurance the way you or I would as American citizens. You can also add that it's cyclical in nature, and it tends to peak every 3 to 5 years. The last big outbreak in California was 2010. But just the fact that illegal immigration, and this is the point of this that the media will not run with because it doesn't fit their agenda. Illegal immigration into the United States negatively impacts every facet of our life, whether it's health care, whether it's the prison system, law enforcement, school, infrastructure. What do I mean by infrastructure? Well, it's literally more people, and we build and design things for a certain population of people, for a certain amount of people, count. So if you build a school for 1,000 people and you decide to add 250 refugees, now you've changed the whole process, the whole service, not to mention the issues that they bring with them, the demand for a translator, health benefits, and other issues. And that's just a small microcosm of it. What about every single time you're turning on the TV somewhere in America, especially in high illegal immigrant states, what are you seeing? The illegal immigrant who kills a family because he's drinking and driving, or was able to commit so many crimes because he's off the system radar. And that's, to me, the biggest issue of illegal immigration. Not the fact that the prisons are overcrowded, also because of illegal immigration, but there's a lot of places overcrowded. And people don't talk about it because the news covers it in a certain way. But you can take any major problem we have, whether it's education, whether it's the prison system in particular, law enforcement, community relations, with different cultures, what puts a strain on all of it? Illegal foreign nationals. In San Francisco, a couple months ago, we were talking about now, if you're in San Francisco illegally, you can vote for school board members. What is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's a slap in the face to citizens, to American citizens who are paying the taxes for their children to be in that school system. And somebody in San Francisco, because they are a progressive leftist, says, well, you can vote now. You can have a say in it. So the news media does not cover the depth of certain issues, and we should fault them for that. We should hold them accountable. Let's go to Robert. Robert is in Atlantic Beach, the very gorgeous, beautiful place, Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show, Robert.
Hey, Ken, great job today. Just real quick, I wanted to comment on Geraldo Rivera's defining what presidential and what isn't presidential for me. I don't need him doing that. If President Trump says if this department or that department doesn't get their act together, then I'm going to have to get involved. He's a businessman, and as the president, he is essentially the CEO of a very large organization. And I think a CEO, if he sees one of his business units starting to go off the rails, that's what we would want a CEO to do, to get involved. And that's why I think he was elected into office. And I think this is what many Republicans and almost all Democrats don't get. He has a businessman's approach, and that's why he was elected to be our president. We want somebody to get involved when they need to and get things back on track. So I don't view him commenting at his rally that he may need to get involved as being unpresidential. That's exactly what I think he was voted in office to do.
Robert, that's a great analogy, and it's amazing how much time was spent on cable news today, especially on the morning programs, slicing and dicing that comment. And that was a comment, like you said, that any good leader or manager would make. And to add to the fact that he could be, quote, America's first CEO, if you want to frame it that way, I think he is so unabashedly American, so in your face with go America, fly the flag, check out my cool hat. I think that drives liberals crazy because liberals, many of the left, many are raised to resent Americana. They're raised to resent certain things about America. I don't disagree with questioning America. There were times when America needed to be questioned. And we needed to be held accountable and challenged, and we have to. But the fraud of the left is they only question who they dislike. They only go after who they dislike. And the rest of them, whether it's Eric Holder at Aretha Franklin's funeral today or Chuck Schumer speaking at, they get away scot-free because if certain people on the left like those people, oh, that's just them. Look at all the ridiculous comments that Joe Biden has made in his career. I mean, it's borderline buffoonery. Never gets held accountable. Never gets held accountable. But a guy like DeSantis can say, let's not monkey it up. And it's 6 hours of analysis on news programs. It's ridiculous. But I can tell you, if you're over-the-top American, if you roll up in a big old truck, and you're a hunter, and you've got your NRA lifetime sticker, which I just replaced on my car because the new ones now are shinier. Have you noticed that? They have like foil on them. I got to get you one, Bo. You can put one on. You can cruise around in Palm Beach, telling everybody you're in the NRA. But when that happens, that makes some liberals uncomfortable. And that's a shame. But understand, if you have a bunch of millennials that are raised to believe that America is the reason there are so many problems in the world, it's hard to unteach that. We're going to come back with some more calls on Open Line Friday as we wrap up the Labor Day weekend Friday show on the EIB network, the Rush Limbaugh Show.
You're listening to the EIB network.
Yeah, I got to remind you that Rush has an incredibly in-depth interview with Greg Jarrett, the Fox News legal analyst, and the real story behind the deep state and anti-Trump collaborators. And that's what it is. It's the real story. If you want to see that, it's in the Limbaugh letter, but there's so much fact and verifiable truth in the Limbaugh letter on a regular basis. I want you to go to rushlimbaugh.com, and then you can see the entire buffet of knowledge. Rush 24/7, the Limbaugh letter, the new store. You need to check it out. But Greg Jarrett really nails it with that book. And if you really want to know what happened, and if you want it, and maybe you're skeptical, well, then get the book and proof it then. That's what I always tell people. If you don't believe what Dinesh D'Souza wrote or what James O'Keefe reported, then prove otherwise. Then disprove it. And that's the thing. Nobody can disprove these folks. So what does the mainstream do? They just ignore them or label them as something. Back to the phones on Open Line Friday. I'm Ken Matthews, and this is Sarah in Longmont, Colorado. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
I just wanted to bring back the conversation around to the Black Panther.
The movie, The Black Panther. Yeah, about
yes.
A month ago, it came out on DVD.
Yeah. One of the reasons I love Black Panther is because of the seamless equality between the genders. Yes, the men are the leaders, T'Challa is king, but in no way while watching that movie do you see any of the women be squashed or put down or diminished due to their gender, and vice versa. You don't see the women stepping out of their way to squash, diminish, or dominate the men in their lives. There is a mutual respect, admiration, and endearment between the characters of both genders. I admire this movie because they show how strong, feminine, but respectful and powerful a woman can be while at the same time adhering to the authority she has chosen to live under. I love how the true femininity of a woman empowers true and strong masculinity in their counterparts, which in turn then empowers the strength of femininity in the women. That's what I love about it.
Well, I love your comment, Sarah, and obviously you thought it out, and you're exactly on point with that comment about the Black Panther. And it's a shame because the pre-sale of the Black Panther, I think people thought it was going to be some type of really a lot of friction and racial conflict and issues, and it turned out to be a very entertaining, not only a superhero film, but exactly what you just said. There were powerful, powerful women. And the great part was, and this is where people don't push it even further, there were powerful men and women of color and beautiful family dynamics and comedy and self-deprecation and all this stuff that we look for in a great movie. But you could walk away. I loved the older sister role, or was it the younger sister or the older sister?
Younger sister.
Yeah, I loved her. She was like one of my favorite characters. You know, just a strong, independent woman, not taking any garbage, but listening to her parents, but giving her brother hell. Yep. I loved it.
My favorite part was where Okoye, the general of the King's Guard, which were, by the way, all women, I love the part at the end when there's that huge battle at the end and Wakabi is fighting with Killmonger against everyone else, and he's rampaging on his rhino towards one of the other guys, and she just stands in front of the rhino, and the rhino comes to a skidding stop and licks her cheek while she just stares at him like, what are you doing?
I remember that. Sarah, thank you so much for the call. Now you've really got people engaged in that movie. If you want to see the entire guard unit that guards the king are the most physically fit women you've ever seen, and they can beat the crap out of a rhino. So that right there should get you involved in it. Right there. And, of course, it may make your neighbor all uncomfortable because it might be politically correct because he may not want rhinos abused. 800-282-2882. I'm Ken Matthews. We'll be right back on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
You're listening